What is up, guys? This is Blake, and welcome back to the Game Room, the safest place in all of YouTube. As you can see, we are in a very different format today because we will be doing a film review of Spider-Man: No Way Home. Basically, you guys know what this is. We're just going to talk about the movie. I'll give you what I liked, what I didn't like, because I actually did have a couple things, really just one, but overall, positive. We'll go through all that kind of stuff. We'll go through the movie. I'll give you what I thought. Both good and bad and stuff like that. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. Before we do that though, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We do Pokemon videos here. We'll be doing more gaming stuff as the months and years go on, provided that I'm able to do this for longer. And we'll probably do more of this stuff, so I'll probably be doing like a little theory things. So I did have a couple questions for the end of the movie that I want to see answered maybe in the future, that I will be talking about a little bit maybe more in detail later on. But yeah, so without further ado, let's get right into this. So I have my notes here. I have it kind of split up into three different sections. Because, I mean, obviously most movies have 3 acts. This one does too. So I split it up in that kind of way there. So that way I was kind of able to keep my thoughts in track. Although some of the notes do kind of mesh through all of them. But anyway, I also do have a lot more notes for the first third, I guess, of the movie than I do the rest of it. Just because I felt like the first third, they did a really good job of world building a little bit and just character building your main set of characters as well. So let's jump right into it. First off, we start out right where Far From Home leaves off. He's on the light pole. Daily Bugle is showing off the whole Mysterio thing, and then we see that that's when we see that he is announced as Spider-Man to the world, and you see the kind of the immediate aftermath of that. You got all those people really really going in on MJ, asking about her. Or asking about him as well. He comes down, gets her. They fly off. A couple Easter eggs I did see at the very beginning of the movie. You see the Rogers Musical billboard that you see in Hawkeye, and Hawkeye actually goes to in that show. And you also see after they go into the subway, and once they come out right at Del Mar's, which, if you remember, is the the Italian the sub shop that is right out there that he goes to in the first movie that got destroyed by the Vulture crew. So you see that's fixed, which is actually really cool world building as well. Again, they do a lot of, at least, especially for like the first bit, they do a lot of show don't tell kind of stuff, which I guess this doesn't really, I mean, it kind of applies, but it doesn't really apply. Another thing about the Daily Bugle I did enjoy, you can definitely tell it's based off InfoWars. If any of you have ever seen like the memes and stuff like of InfoWars, there's a lot of similarities in the way J. Jonah Jameson is portrayed, which I guess he was always kind of that way, so that doesn't really change much. But just the way, also with like the supplement pills he shows in that one commercial, right? I think it was right before him and his little guy go off to Happy's apartment later on. You see that, which is kind of funny. A good little nod to that. But yeah, then you get, basically going back, they get to the apartment. You have not weird, but you have the scene where May and Happy are weirded out by MJ and Peter in his room. May comes in there, says hi to MJ, introduces herself, all that kind of stuff. Then you kind of get this wide shot, the continuing shot, which I always love when Marvel does. They do it, I know they did it in the first 2 Avengers movies. I don't think they did it in the third. I think they did it in the 4th. Yeah, I guess it probably is a whole like Avengers symbol kind of thing. Where it's just a continuing shot of like all the heroes fighting and stuff like that. Where in this, you see Peter like running through his apartment, having to sling down all the windowsill, like windows and stuff like that. The blinds, that's what they're called. Just going through all the, like, making sure all of them are shut down, so no one can look in. But then while you're doing this, you hear all these people shouting up at Spider-Man because they obviously see him go into the apartment. And then while he's trying to distract May and Happy, because they broke up all of a sudden, I guess it's kind of the aftermath of that conversation we see at the end of Far From Home. You see on the TV, there's all these helicopters looking down at Peter and Peter and Aunt May's apartment. And they all see this. And at that point, you see Peter defeated, just kind of flip open the blinds to one of the windows, and you see all these helicopters and all that. And that's kind of like your true introduction to the movie. Then we go into, I think this is about when the flips of him being arrested, him being whatever. And that's kind of when you see, yeah, you kind of get a retelling, I guess, of everything that's kind of happened so far. You do find out Nick Fury is off-world, so that is something that people know, which is honestly kind of strange because you would think, I mean, because technically Fury died, right? He died. He in Winter Soldier died, of course, in quotes. So the fact that people now know that he's back, he's returned to life is interesting. Or at least the one cop did, which again is curious. But again, no one knows that I guess people do know. I don't know. That's something I just thought of as well. That people do know that Fury is alive and well, and maybe that happened during the blip. People saw him return, whatever. So maybe his death was just kind of maybe I don't know. But that is interesting that people do know that he is alive. But you just kind of see your three main like kid protagonists, going through being interrogated and stuff like that. MJ's is the most funny because you do get the hint of MJ Watson, which of course, if you actually know Spider-Man stuff at all, Mary Jane Watson has always been Peter's true love interest, and this is Michelle Jones Watson, which Jones Watson I think seems to be the hyphenation. I'm interested to kind of see where that comes from, but whatever, it doesn't really matter much. It's a nice little nod. Then we get to Ned, and I'm going to be honest. The first time it didn't bother me. This time, I guess I didn't mention, I went to go watch it just for the experience the first time, and then we went to go watch it yesterday for a second time for me to actually take notes and kind of get into another grasp of like what I'm dealing with this movie. The first time it didn't bother me. This time though, Ned really just seemed like I don't know. I didn't like him in this as much. I'm sure people will have their own opinions and they'll think otherwise. And that's fine. I mean, I didn't think it mattered much. He stuck to the Ned character that we've seen so far. Nothing was different. I just didn't. It felt like he was just used for the one thing that he does later on in the movie, and we'll talk about that. But he was just very. I don't know. It was just very awkward. And there was definitely some parts of the movie that I felt like Ned kind of detracted from the movie a little bit. But again, as you go on the movie, you kind of understand why he's there. Especially, I mean, obviously, besides the fact that he is Peter's friend and he's going to be there no matter what. I don't know. He just kind of, to me, he detracted a little bit more from the second viewing of the film than he did the first for me, which is strange. But again, that's my only gripe with this movie. Is just Ned just felt a little off throughout this entire movie. But again, he was used for this one purpose, and they kind of had this gag go out, and we'll talk about that later on as well. So after they get back from the precinct or whatever, we get Peter, Aunt May, and Happy all in a room with, and I was so excited when we saw this, Matt freaking Murdock. If you don't know who that is, that's Daredevil, played by Charlie Cox in the Netflix series, actually, which is super cool, especially considering we just got Kingpin introduced into Hawkeye, which makes it so much cooler that we're actually getting to see these characters come back. So Matt Murdock is there just as a lawyer, like obviously the blind lawyer, whatever. He's talking about like, yeah, there's not much they can get you on. You should be fine, all that kind of stuff. Then he turns to Happy and says that you need a really good lawyer because of like you hiding a bunch of Stark tech. Now, there are two ways that I think people can think about this. You either see it in the movie when it comes to the fabricator and dummy, which could very well just be what they're talking about. I think at least it's something different, though. I think he's talking about what's going to happen in the new TV show Armor Wars, which basically, if you don't know what that is, they released. I don't think they've started filming yet or anything, but it basically stars Rhodey. I think Happy might be in it too, and I think Ironheart is going to be in it as well. That is basically just about what happens post Stark death with all of his armor, all of his technology. Where does it go? I've got a sneaking feeling this is hinting at that. That in Armor Wars, that they're like, this is how that armor and stuff gets out. We'll obviously see when that comes out and what happens from there. That's just kind of my little theory. I did think it was interesting but I did like that he was in there. And then obviously you see right at the end of his little cameo, someone throws a brick through the window that says Mysterio was right or whatever, and Matt just catches it like nothing. And keep in mind, he is blind. None of them know he is Daredevil. So he has a really good line too. It's like, how did you Peter asks him, how did you do that? And he's like, I'm a really good lawyer. Which again, all of us who know he's Daredevil all like laugh and we get it. It's funny. But to them, it's still kind of weird and awkward. But that makes me really excited. Also because Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Deadpool all kind of have like their little trio thing, I guess. I don't really understand all that, but they kind of have their own thing going in the comics. So yeah, there is that, and then we kind of see them go to Happy's apartment. We kind of get a better idea. Okay, this is where they're going to be staying. We don't really get a lot in there, I don't think. That's when we do get introduced that Dummy is still around, even though I think he technically died, of course, in Iron 3, but he's back, or is at least another version of him. You see the fabricator that he uses in Far From Home, I believe, to make his new suit. But yeah, and that's kind of when you get like the real sense of him and MJ's relationship, which they do so well. Like throughout this movie, it's like nailed. A present day high school relationship. Like you see them on FaceTime, just kind of talking to each other, messing around. I don't know, like, and part of it is because like that's kind of how my relationship has to go, especially because we're long term. I really connect with that because it's just a perfect representation. You see them talking, you see them like joking around with each other and stuff like that. It is really cool to see them really delve into that kind of relationship that you don't normally see. Like usually it's just them going out and get coffee or going out and doing whatever, but you really get to see that, and it's really freaking cool. Then we get the return to the high school, where again, I've said this about every single Spider-Man movie so far. They nail the school news. It's so corny and cheesy and cringy, but you love it because I mean, if obviously anyone, especially in my generation, that grew up growing up, going to school, going to middle school, going to high school, that had like a news network, it was always like it always did what it had to do, but it was so cringy and like you just kind of like, why are we watching this? This is weird. But they nail it in these movies, and I love it so much. They really nailed it in the first one. When they were talking about the homecoming stuff, at least for me, they did. And the second one was also funny because they did do the little like in memoriam thing for all the heroes that fought in and I guess died in Endgame, which I thought was funny, and the way that it was made was just great. But yeah, I've always enjoyed the school news, and we don't get a lot of it in this, obviously, because he's not in school for most of this. But I just loved it. It was awesome. And then, like, just kind of going back, the first third of the film really fleshes out the Peter Parker part of Spider-Man, like, with college, especially because he's a senior now, with college admissions, really understanding, like, his, his sense, like, I guess his sensitive side, his personal life. We kind of gotten that with the other ones, but I feel like it's been so rushed, that, like, you kind of get it while you're also getting Spider-Man stuff, where in this, you basically you don't see him really get into costume until, I guess, when he goes to the bridge. Like, you just see Peter. You don't see him as Spider-Man, which I really enjoyed, and I was really glad they did it that way. So anyway, then they're going through the whole college stuff. They find out, like, hey, we didn't get it anywhere. And from what it sounds like, they didn't get it anywhere because, and when I say they, I mean Ned, MJ, and Peter. Because their big thing was they wanted to go to MIT. They really wanted to go there. They wanted to go there. They had backup schools that were all kind of, I think they said that were the same, and they didn't get in any of them. And it's kind of inferred by the way that when Ned reads his, that none of them got in because they were just friends with Spider-Man. And obviously Peter didn't get in because he is Spider-Man, and because of controversy, which realistically there wasn't. I don't think there really should have been, but here we are. So yeah, just like you really get that sense of disappointment, and obviously for anyone who has gone through that college admission process and been denied from a school that they wanted to go to so bad, you really get that sense of loss, especially. But you almost feel like it's even more unfair for them because they didn't do anything wrong. And we know that obviously they saved the world. Peter saved the world, and he's being punished for it, which I guess is another kind of whole thing about Spider-Man that we see throughout these movies, or just especially throughout the comics, but especially in these movies, you see him punished for doing the right thing, and that's part of the whole argument that we see later on, that we'll get into later. So then about after this, they're like, well, how do we fix this? I wish I could do this for y'all. This is not y'all's fault that this is happening. Then he looks up in the little donut shop that MJ works in. He sees these little, like, I guess they're rubber ducks, but they have like wizards on them, and that's when he gets the idea. Hey, we'll go to Doctor Strange, and this is where you see in the trailers where he goes in the Sanctum Sanctorum. It's super wintry. It's all like it's cold and all that kind of stuff. And we find out again just a little bit more world building, nothing that really matters in the context of the movie, but just kind of just little bits and bobs there that kind of give you an idea of what's happened over the past 5 years. You do find out that Wong does survive the blip. I don't actually remember if we see his face in that little thing they do in Endgame when they're talking about everyone who disappeared. But it is confirmed he does survive the blip. He is now the Sorcerer Supreme, which is interesting, which makes me think he might die in Multiverse of Madness. We might do something else with that later. I don't really want to get into that. But anyway, Wong is the Sorcerer Supreme now because Doctor Strange got blipped away. And then we go into this whole thing about the whatever. I don't even remember what the spell was called. But basically they in this, Wong is actually okay with him using the spell to make everyone forget that he's Spider-Man. Instead of in the trailers, it being him being like, don't do it. It's a bad idea. And then he's saying, okay, I won't. And then he winks at him and whatever. In this, he actually like is okay with it. He's like, fine, do it. Don't break anything though. And obviously, without the rest of the movie, he broke it. So they go down into the little place, whatever, and they do the spell. And as in the trailer that you see, he starts getting into a bunch of, well, I want these people to know, I want him to know, I want her to know, and all this kind of stuff that eventually breaks down the spell. And you see you see the thing break apart again. And something that was actually interesting to me. I don't know if I actually saw what I saw, but I think it's what I saw. When you see Doctor Strange look up and the sky's all purple and it's like when the multiverses are starting to come in, I think you see Lizard in like space right there. I could be wrong, but the way that the white and the purple, whatever, was kind of moving around, it looked like Lizard, and it looked very familiar to what you see at the end of the movie, and we'll get there as well, because I did see a couple interesting characters in that too, which was super cool. So yeah, I think you see Lizard, and I think that's why later on when you see him already imprisoned by Doctor Strange, I think that's why. But we'll get to there in a minute. So you possibly see Lizard, and you kind of maybe see some other characters in there too that maybe I didn't see when I watched both times. But anyway, so the spell breaks, and you get the return of the little micro-realities from What If. I think they look very similar anyway to what the evil Doctor Strange is in What If, in his episode, what he's stuck in after he destroys his universe. So it looks very reminiscent of that, which I think is cool, that we're getting some tie-ins from the actual TV series, and there is another one that we'll get into a little bit later. So then after that happens, Peter leaves. He talks to him about like, well, if you've gotten the letter of deferral and you talk to them trying to state your case, I'm sorry, there's nothing else we can do. Peter then realizes that was an option, which actually I think is funny, because I think you're going to start seeing a lot of that in college applications now, because a lot of people who get deferred from like their dream schools, like obviously here in Georgia, it's UGA, you might be seeing a bunch of people trying to call and like state their case of like why they should go, and because I've actually never heard of that being a thing, so that might be interesting that actually you see kind of like an actual real world explosion of people trying to state their case to their dream school of trying to get them in. That would actually kind of be interesting to see. So yeah, then you see him go to the bridge after talking to Flash, who I'm kind of glad wasn't in this movie as much. He was actually kind of funny the way they used him early on when he was just like he had his own little book, like he was trying to sell off Spider-Man, which I thought was interesting. Really, it kind of feels like it kind of sticks with this version of Flash. And he gets into MIT and all that, so he uses him to try to figure out who he needs to talk to get Ned and MJ in. Which again, I love the fact that he was just worried about those two and not himself. Again, really sticks to the whole Peter Parker is very selfless, and the fact that he's willing to make sure that his friends get into MIT and not him. So anyway, he goes and finds the lady of emissions or whatever her name was. And that's when that's when everyone finds the bridge scene. And that's when Doc Ock comes in, and it's super cool because he makes a bunch of different little references to Spider-Man 2, which was really cool. And that's the other thing is like there are a bunch of Easter eggs from the other movies that we get with these characters that I don't really get into. I'm not going to get into here really. But it is interesting. He talks about his machine, which basically, when you learn later, is kind of like just a primitive arc reactor, is what he was working on. But he starts talking, and then you really see Peter get angry after he says, "I should have killed your little girlfriend," talking about MJ, Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2, because he still thinks this is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, or what I will be using as OG Spider-Man. That's when you see Peter get really angry. He's like, "All right, yeah, no, you're done." And he goes in. That's when they start really fighting. But while he's doing that, he's also trying to save the emissions lady because she is like dangling off a bridge and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's that, and then they keep fighting. And Doc Ock basically wins. He tears off a little bit of the nanotech, which then goes onto his arms, which is what that red stuff we see in the trailers is. But then comes the actual, I guess it's a little bit of a gag, but they use it really well in this. Doc Ock is now not in control of his arms. Peter is, because it is the nanotech of his suit. So he now is able to basically Bluetooth connect to the arms and make sure, and like basically he can do whatever he wants with it. So he takes the lady's car, brings it back up top. And they both go up, and he ties Doc Ock up with his own arm because he has control. And Doc Ock can't do anything. He tries to fight, but he can't because the arms are basically just staying still. Which is, again, it's really freaking cool that they do it that way. It's actually really interesting. But yeah, so then he brings, now before that, they're talking a little bit on the bridge, and then you see the Goblin Bomb that you see in the trailer. And that's when you see Green Goblin float in, and right before they start fighting Green Goblin, you see one of Strange's portals basically like swipe through, kind of like a PowerPoint slide, and takes Doc Ock into prison, and then you Spider-Man into the little dark hold or whatever the prison is, the crypt I think they called it. I can't actually remember. But that's when you first get introduced to Lizard. Bringing back what I said earlier, Strange caught Lizard because I think he saw him in the clouds or whatever it was that they were surrounded by. So I think that is where that comes. That's why he's there all of a sudden. So yeah, then we get into that part of the movie where they're talking about how you got to catch all these people and yeah. So they go into this. They find out that there are more of these people because there's Green Goblin, and apparently there's a couple others that probably came through as well. I think there are 6 prison cells, which is interesting because obviously the Sinister Six. You see Peter come back, and that's when he finds Lizard is already imprisoned. And then you see him and Doctor Strange kind of fight about it. Really it was more of just Doctor Strange being pissy about it. And that's when he references Loki, when he says this shouldn't even be possible. These people shouldn't even be able to come in. Which basically means he kind of has an idea of what the multiverse is already, which I guess kind of makes sense if you're the Sorcerer Supreme and all that. You kind of get a glimpse into all that kind of stuff. But you kind of know for a fact this takes place kind of after the events of Loki in a way, because you see at the end of Loki that all the multiverses start to be able to branch open. And we're starting to see that come into fruition in this universe because you're seeing all of these villains from other universes coming into the main MCU universe. So that's kind of what that reference is. This shouldn't even be possible. If you've watched Loki, this is possible now because of the show. So anyway, there's that. So then he tasks Peter with finding all the other villains that might have come through or whatever. So then Peter enlists the help of Ned and MJ. They help him. They do the little Scooby-Doo this thing with Doctor Strange, which is actually shit in in the movie rather than crap in the trailer, which kind of makes sense. I mean, trailers want to be a little bit more PG. So yeah, then they are trying to find whoever, and they think they find Green Goblin, when in actuality, like, because he's outside like a military base or whatever, and as most people know, Green Goblin Harry Osborn was the military contractor in the original Spider-Man movie. So we assume, and they assume, that this is Green Goblin because that's the only other one they know is here. Now, obviously, once you see him flying through, and he's flying on all the light poles and the electric towers, then you realize, okay, he's actually not going after Green Goblin, he's going after Electro, because that's what you see in the trailers is when he goes after Electro. And when he first gets to the little plant area wherever they were, you do see like the sand kind of roaming around and stuff like that. That's when obviously. And then after that, he sees Electro. He tries to shoot the magic web, which, oh, by the way, Doctor Strange basically turns his nanotech suit into like this web slinger that can shoot basically magic to transfer whatever it hits to the prison in the crypt or whatever. I'm going to call it the crypt. I don't actually know what it's called. We're going to call it the crypt though. So he gets there, he sees Electro, he shoots one, it goes through him, and it hits a tree, which is obviously a little MCU gag they always do, and that's fine. But then that's when you see Electro really wake up, and then he starts shooting at Peter, and this is where you actually get introduced to Sandman. Sandman kind of is around the same place, and you see him trying to help Peter because he thinks this is the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, the OG Spider-Man. Obviously, and then Peter takes off his mask, like, hey, I'm not your Peter, but could you help me take down this guy? And Sandman's like, yeah, well, let's do it. Because obviously he turned good, I guess, at the end of Spider-Man 3 to help Peter, defeat whatever. Or he just turned good. So they fight off, Electro. Then you get this cool little scene with Jamie Foxx's Electro, like, actually as a real human again and not just a blue alien or blue laser dude. Really talking about stuff like that, and that's when Peter slinks him into the prison again. Sandman thinks he killed him. He's like, where did you go? What happened? What did you do? He's like, yeah, he's okay. Trust me, I'm still Spider-Man. He's like, I don't care, and like, that was another thing with Sandman to me, that they used like him saying I don't care a lot, which kind of was like, I guess you probably could have said more. He felt very apathetic to what he was trying to do in this movie. But it also was one of those things that didn't really detract me from the first time I watched it. It did a little bit the second time because it's like I feel like you could have said a little bit more and used him a little bit more. But I don't know, that's just me. So yeah, anyway, he basically then blasts Sandman into the prison. Sandman obviously sees they're all alive. He stays back to fix all the damage that was caused during the battle, which is another thing I actually did really like. They did a really nice way, like I said, of show don't tell when it comes to Electro and how he defeats him. Because in in Civil War, when he is trying to explain the Star Wars thing, when he was trying to trip Ant-Man, he talks about the AT-ATs and all that kind of stuff. That is a version of tell and not showing. But that was more for a gag and whatever. In this, you see him taking down the connections for the electric towers, which obviously is what is making the electricity run, and that's what Electro is getting all of his energy from. So they did a really nice job of not even saying why he was doing what he did, but once he disconnects them, you realize, oh, he's trying to just, like, I guess, disperse the power that Electro is drawing from to actually defeat him, which is really smart and really cool, which again brings in the whole like Peter Parker Spider-Man just being really smart as opposed to just being Tony Stark's whatever. So I loved that. Because at first I'm like, what is he doing? And then the first time I watched it, and then when I saw him actually disconnect, I'm like, oh, that was super. I don't know. To me, that was super cool. Getting like when he did all that. So yeah, then he's back, and he fixes all the stuff, and I can't remember. I think Aunt May calls him at that point. Yeah, I think Aunt May calls him once he's done. I can't honestly remember, but I think that's what happens. And that's when he finds out, hey, we found one of the guys you're looking for. He's here. So in Peter's mind, obviously it's what happens, the only one left is Green Goblin. Oh, I also have to mention, before that you see Green Goblin like in this alleyway, kind of reminiscent of the No More Spider-Man comic cover, where he just leaves with the trash can, with the Spider-Man thing in the trash can. You actually see it in the OG Spider-Man 2, I believe. So he's talking to the Mask. The Mask obviously is like Green Goblin, and in this scenario right now, he is Harry Osborn, or not Harry, Norman Osborn. He's very you see he is very sorry for what he's done. He's like, no, I want you away from me. I don't want to be this anymore. And then he breaks the mask, which I think I was actually really cool for, because the way they design him later is really reminiscent of how he actually looks. But yeah, so the mask is destroyed, and you kind of get this scene of like him walking away from the broken mask, which I think was supposed to be reminiscent of the obviously the comic cover of Spider-Man being Spider-Man No More. So then after this, you cut back to Peter in the woods or whatever, cutting and fixing all the cables and all that. And you see all the spider webs he used to try to fix it. So you see he's really trying his best. It just looks crappy. But he's 18. You can't really do much else, or 17, however old. So yeah, there was also that. And I think this is when he gets the call from Aunt May saying, hey, I think we found one of these guys. He says he's looking for you. So then in his mind, it's like, there's only one left. And he killed people with the Goblin Bomb. Or almost killed him too. So he rushes in, he rushes back, he gets there, and he's running through like, where's Aunt May? Where's Aunt May? He runs through, and that's when you see Aunt May and Harry Osborn just sitting down talking. Like there's no evil, no nothing. Just them sitting down, talking to each other, and just kind of having a conversation. So then, when Peter comes in, Harry Osborn is extremely confused because he again knows the OG Spider-Man of Tobey Maguire. God, you get all these Spider-Man confused. He knows Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. So when he sees Tom Holland's Peter Parker, he's like, "You're not Spider-Man." But obviously in this universe he is, because he does understand that he's in a different universe, and he starts talking about how, like, he has this thing in his head, he wants it out, he wants it gone. So Peter truly believes that he is good, Norman Osborn is good. So he brings them back to their the stronghold where they're keeping all the villains, and where MJ and Ned are. So they go there. And Doctor Strange comes in. He's like, "Oh, good, you found them all." And he then puts Green Goblin or Norman Osborn into one of the cells. So then he's like, "Okay, great, you got them all. This is the box we're going to use to send them all back." And before we get to all this, everyone kind of shares their story a little bit, talking about like how they all got here, who everyone is. The villains kind of introduce each other, which is kind of interesting, because obviously each one is kind of from a different time. Doc Ock came after Green Goblin, so he's able to say who Green Goblin is, and like, hey, you died. Sandman is able to say, hey, no, you both died. And then you see Electro being like, yeah, no, Kirk Connors tried to turn people into lizards and all that kind of stuff. And Lizard was also kind of funny in that when he talked, talking about how like, I could give you a real makeover to Electro. And he's like, turn him into a lizard. And he's like, exactly. Which, I don't know. To me, that was just kind of interesting. That was funny. I think Lizard was probably the weakest villain of all of these, just because he was very. He didn't have a lot to do. You didn't really get to see him be captured. But he was very funny. I don't think he detracted anything at all. He felt like he needed to be there, I guess, or at least he should have been there. So anyway, then we start going through. Yeah, Doctor Strange wants to send them all back. Before this, however, we do get the whole idea of basically the big argument of this movie of save yourself or help others. Which do you want to do? Which Spider-Man do you want to be? Essentially, and that argument is basically given by Aunt May, saying how she thinks he should help Norman. He thinks she should help all the other villains and help them become human or real again, and keep them and help them stay alive. So you do get that. So you get that argument, which in my mind makes her kind of the Uncle Ben of this universe, because he kind of does the same thing in the first two Spider-Man movies, and we'll get more into that comparison a little bit later. So you're basically getting to the save yourself or help others argument of this whole movie, and that is kind of what drives the rest of the movie going forward. Doctor Strange is obviously you got to save yourself because these people don't belong here. They can't stay here, stuff like that. Peter's like, no, we can help them. We can save them. We can help them survive. We can get rid of these powers for them. We don't have to kill them. So you see that happen. And this is about the time that right before Doctor Strange presses the button to send them all back, Peter gets the box and they go off and do their little fight or whatever. Then they have their fight. Peter traps him in the mirror dimension, which is with really cool. Like, I like how he was able to connect the dots between math and magic, I guess, or science and magic. In this universe, because as much as the MCU likes to go out of this world with this stuff, they do still have a base sense of realism, and magic is a lot of that kind of thing. It's like manipulating physics, essentially. So they get into all that. He gets the box back, and he saves all of them from basically being killed by Doctor Strange. So then he takes them all and is like, hey, you can either deal with the wizard or you can deal with me, and I'm going to try to help you and send you back. He's just going to try to kill you. So he didn't so there's not really an option, but there is. They all go with him, there's all this, if you mess up, we're gonna fry you apart. At least that's what Electro says, or something like that. One other kind of big world building thing during Doctor Strange's fight with Peter, you see, you kind of get an idea where this is set. And my guess is probably around Thanksgiving, because they go through a mall while they're going through the mirror dimension, and you hear Christmas music playing. You see a Christmas tree up, but everywhere else is still fall-ish. Like, you see leaves on the trees, it's all orange and stuff like that. So my guess is probably around Thanksgiving time, because that obviously Christmas music gets played probably a month before Christmas actually starts. And obviously it's still fall. So that's kind of my guess of where that is. But that's kind of another world building thing they do. So then we get to where, Peter's trying to help. And this is where I actually really enjoyed Willem Dafoe's interpretation of Norman Osborn. Because to me, there is a very big comparison between him and Doc Brown from Back to the Future with Peter and Marty. The way, their connection was so pure and so genuine and so good. I loved Norman Osborn in this movie. And you truly believe Norman is wanting to help. And they eventually do. They cure Doc Ock. They fix the inhibitor chip in the back of his neck. He becomes human again. And Doc Ock, again, is just is like a genuine character. He's extremely grateful that they saved him. He's extremely happy. He helps them later on. He gives back the nanotech, and it becomes the giant spider that goes on his suit now, which I thought was cool. How they did that. And then they're trying to help. They put the thing on Electro or whatever. They don't get to Sandman or Lizard yet. They do try to get, but in the next one they're trying to work on a Great Goblin. And this is where the movie turns. Green Goblin actually emerges before any of us see it. He still kind of is posing as Norman but he's slowly already there. And this is about the time I mentioned it earlier, where the Daily Bugle comes and they're trying to find Spider-Man, and obviously he has all these villains, so he's trying to find incriminating evidence. He's already called Department of Damage Control, and stuff like that. So Peter around this time gets the Spidey sense going off, and it's going off. Like something is up, and he's kind of looking around, like, what is going on? Like Norman asks, "Are you okay?" I think Doc Ock asks, "Are you okay?" May asks the same things, like, "Hey, like something's going on." You just kind of, everything else around him is muffled. Everything else around him is blurred, but you really see Peter, and he's like, "What is going on?" And he's kind of looking around at all these villains. And at first I'm like, what is, like, when I first watched, I'm like, what is he changed his mind? Is, like, what is going on? And then you see him look at Willem Dafoe or Norman Osborn, and he shoots his hand away with, I guess, I don't know what he actually had in his hand, but Norman was kind of lurking away, so he ties him basically to the window, and then that's when, like that, Green Goblin comes back. And I'm going to tell you right now, both times, the first time I was scared, the second time I was terrified, and I knew what happened. To me, Green Goblin was scarier than Thanos in these movies. Like, his presence, his evil. Like, he is what the Joker is to Batman, for Spider-Man. And the way he acted in this movie, it was terrifying, dude. Like, I was so scared. Like my chest was tight. I'm like, oh no, this is bad. So yeah, he kind of gives his little monologue, talking about how, like, gods take what they want and stuff like that. And that's when you see Electro and Sandman all kind of escape. Doc Ock is trying to fight them genuinely, trying to keep them there, but he gets blown off and he escapes. And that's when you see, like, there's this fight between Green Goblin and Peter. Oh my god! This is one of the biggest things I loved about this movie is the fact that you see how strong Spider-Man is. We'll get more into it later on, at the end of the movie. But the fight with him and Green Goblin, like, this is the most hurt that you see Peter ever. Like, even against Thanos, he still comes out of it okay. Against Green Goblin, he's hurt. He actually gets injured, and Green Goblin, like, he busts the crap out of him. So yeah, all that kind of stuff happens. It just it's so much, you feel the pain, and at the very end of it, Aunt May's, like, running down the stairs, like, she's trying, because she has the Goblin Serum or whatever they are trying to use to actually get rid of Green Goblin. They all land at the bottom of the apartment complex that they are, because they were at Happy's apartment. I forgot to mention that. So he's kind of talking to Peter. Aunt May comes running behind him. She stabs him with the Green Goblin Serum. He pushes her back around Peter, or maybe not. I don't know. But the serum doesn't work. So Green Goblin still lives, and she grabs something out of the ceiling. It looked like kind of like a mace kind of thing is what she was trying to grab onto. And that's when you see the Green Goblin glider come in, bash her, like, really hurt her, knock her against the wall, or knock her to the ground. Well, not just knock her, like, she got rocked by the thing. He climbs up there, and that's when you see, like, this really, like, it's a more accurate Green Goblin look. Like, he has the hood. He's not, like, obviously his face isn't green, but, like, you get that, like, goblinish look to Willem Dafoe, which was so good. And then he throws the Goblin Bomb. He almost blows up Aunt May. Peter knocks it away. It still blows up stuff, but it doesn't blow up Aunt May. So then they're both hurt. So then that's when they're trying to talk, and they're like, I should have just sent them back. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have tried to help them. And that's when Aunt May's like, no, get your shit together. You did the right thing. You were doing the right thing. Just because I'm the one who told you, you're the one who did it. This isn't my moral mission, is what she says. And that's when you get the line, with great power comes great responsibility. Because she's talking about, you have all these gifts. You have this power. And with great power comes great responsibility. And right then and there, you know something's about to happen. Whether you had seen rumors and leaks or not, you know something bad is about to happen. Because what happens every time that sentence gets said? The one who says it dies. And Aunt May dies in all the rubble with all the police outside shouting and yelling at Peter to come out and put their hands up and get arrested. Happy comes in. He sees what happens. He knows what's happening. He comes out. He shouts to Peter to run, to get out of there so he doesn't get captured. And Aunt May dies in his arms. And you see the hurt. And especially when he's looking at her, you almost see him age in the fire. Because the fire is kind of lighting up one side of his face. You almost see him look older than he does normally. Because until now, he's kind of just been this kid. This is the first time I think you look at him and you really see the age that he's gained in just like that. Just in 5 minutes, seeing his aunt die. The last remaining, I guess, morality he has left, his sense of morality is gone. He just goes to this super dark place. And you see it later on. We'll get into it in a little bit. But you just see him. From this point on, he looks older. He looks more mature. And I think part of it is the way Tom Holland acts it out. And I think the other part of it is genuinely just they make him look a little older as well, the way he holds himself. So but anyway, so the cops come in, he actually gets shot in the arm, and he runs away, he gets out of there, and you later see him standing just in front of this billboard, bloody, you see the blood dripping down his face, and there is JJ talking about like how dangerous Spider-Man is and the wake of destruction and all that. And you just, at that point, you really just see like he feels like he's lost. He feels like he lost the battle. He lost. So then we cut to Ned and Jay and MJ, who are at Ned's house, or Ned's apartment, I guess, rather. And they have the box because Peter gave it to MJ. They hear about what happened on the news. They don't actually find out that Aunt May dies. I don't think they did say, the news did say is confirmed that one person died. But that's it. And they're trying to wait for Peter to say anything because Peter's told him if they don't hear from him to press the box and just send them all back. MJ almost does it. And I think at that point, Ned is like, I just wish we could see him. And he's moving his arms around. And you see this little spark. Because he got Doctor Strange's sling ring after the battle with Peter and Doctor Strange. This is why, and this right here is the whole reason that Ned is in this movie, is so he can make these portals. And he makes the portal, and he tries to make it again. It doesn't work. He makes it the third time, and it works. He's like, I want to see Peter. We're in this alley. You see this person at the very end. He's a little, and he looks taller. It looks weird, because you kind of tell that's not Tom Holland. He comes running through because they're shouting him like, Peter, right here. He comes running through, jumps through the portal, and right there you see the Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield is standing right there in front of MJ and Ned. And there's a really funny scene with like he's trying to like convince them that he's Peter Parker. MJ throws bread at him and all that kind of stuff. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm trying to figure out if you have the tingle." And I was like, "I got the tingle thing." And he jumps up like he's basically holding onto the ceiling with like his like 4 fingers or whatever. And then Ned's mom comes in, or whoever it is. I think it's your grandma. Is like, "Hey, can you get the cobwebs up there?" And he crawls on the ceiling, gets those, and comes back down. And he's like, and they're like, "Okay, this is another Peter. This isn't ours. We need to find the real one." And, of course, Andrew, the Amazing Spider-Man Peter is like, "Ouch!" He's like, "Sorry, no offense, whatever." And they find the other, and then he makes another circle or portal to find, obviously, Tom Holland. And then that's when you see the OG Spider-Man of Tobey Maguire come through, and he's not dressed in a Spider-Man thing. He's just dressed as a normal person. And at first, I thought, okay, they were trying to look for Spider-Man the first time. They find Spider-Man in Andrew Garfield. They were trying to find Peter the second time, and they find Tobey Maguire. No, they said Peter both times, so I was wrong on that one. But now everything that has been rumored, all three Spider-Man being in this movie that they've debunked and they've debunked and they've debunked. Yeah, we getting all three freaking Spider-Man in this movie, and I'm telling you, we're gonna talk about it a little bit more in a minute. But oh my God, if they made a 2-hour movie of those three just sitting at a bar and just talking, I would eat it up. The three Spider-Mans, like, the way they meshed together was so cool. I loved it. We'll get there in a minute. So anyway, he's like, hey, I tried to find your friend. I was trying to find Peter. And then they kind of have him and ASM's Peter kind of have their own, a small battle or whatever, trying to figure out, okay, wait, you're not Peter. And then they fight, whatever. It's like, is there anywhere that he goes to just get away from it all? That he just kind of stands on top of? Because, like, obviously it's Spider-Man, kind of just, like, whatever. And then they kind of have a little joke where OG Spider-Man is like, yeah, no, I think it's the Empire State, or it's the Chrysler Building. And then ASM Spider-Man is like, no, it's the Empire State Building. It's like, it's a better view. He's like, yeah, it's a good view and all that kind of stuff. Again, just a little, like, what is the word? I don't remember. Just the way they interact with each other just is so good. Their interactions are so beautiful. I loved it. So then they go find Peter, and he's on top of the school building. I was kind of, and like, I'm not going to lie, when I saw this, I was kind of hoping that he would be at the mural of Iron Man. I'm kind of glad they didn't, but I was really hoping they would, because you see that's where he goes after he's stricken with, during Far From Home. I was kind of hoping we'd see that again, just to kind of get this, like, this is where he likes to go. This is where he feels most comfortable because of Tony Stark. But I also like they didn't do that, because you really see it in this movie that they are pushing him away from anything Tony Stark. You see it later, we'll talk about it later on in the movie at the very end. Anyway, Ned and MJ come up, they hug him, he starts bawling again, and MJ's like, hey, there's some people who want to see you. And then he looks up, and you see Toby and Andrew up there at the top of, like, the tower of the high school. They jump down. He's like, no, don't you get closer. And that's when they start talking. And this is where I kind of got an idea of why these two are here. They are the representation. They are a physical representation of the angel and the demon on your shoulder. Like, everyone knows what that looks like. You have your better half and your worse half. Your angel and your demon. Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, the OG Peter, is representing the light version. And Amazing Spider-Man Peter is the dark version. You hear it when they talk. You hear OG Peter talking about, when I was like, I've realized now, and I've realized that the revenge, it doesn't actually go away. It hurts. And it's what you do after that really defines you. And part of that is because he is older and all that kind of stuff. But then you see the Amazing Spider-Man Peter is like, after Gwen died, I stopped pulling my punches. I became worse. I wasn't a hero anymore. And you hear that hurt in his voice. And they do. And they do Amazing Spider-Man Peter so much justice in this movie, and I loved it. So they represent what is MCU Peter going to do? Is he going to become that worse Spider-Man, or is he going to become the a greater than Spider-Man? And in this, you don't really know what his answer is yet. You don't know which way he's going to go. And I don't think he does either. But so anyway, they go in. They're like, okay, we're gonna cure them all. Because I think and at some point, they start talking about with great power comes great responsibility again. And Tobey Maguire's like, your Aunt May said that? Then I don't think she died for nothing. And it's like what I said earlier. In this, Aunt May is Uncle Ben. And this is where the first time I watched it, I got the realization, this is Peter's origin story. Right? In the third movie, they are doing his origin story as Spider-Man. They did in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Kevin Feige did in 3 movies what the other two series did in 30 minutes of Peter's origin. Why he does what he does. And you get it so much more now because they took that time. You see him evolve from being just a kid trying to do whatever to trying to be like his idol of Tony Stark, to realizing he is now Tony Stark, to realizing he's not Tony Stark, he is Spider-Man. This movie, Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man officially. To me, that was so cool. So anyway, they make all the serums to help everyone and whatever. They remake everything. You have some funny little lines there talking about how when Ned comes over and asks both Spider-Man, like, hey, did you all have a best friend? He's like, I did. He died trying to kill me. And Ned gets super freaked out. He's like, and for most people who don't know, Ned Leeds in the comics is Hobgoblin. He is a supervillain that tries to kill Spider-Man. So I think we're going to be seeing Hobgoblin in the future, which will be super cool. And I think it'll have something to do with the whole memory thing that we'll get into in a minute. So anyway, they make all the serums. They meet up at the new Statue of Liberty, which has Captain America's shield on it, which I think is stupid. I like the old one better, but that's just me. I don't know if that'll actually happen or not. I hope it doesn't, honestly, but we'll see. So then and right before all the action starts, you do get a little bit more of the interactions between the three Peters. And oh my God, it was so amazing. Like them talking about like, what was your greatest villain that you fought? He's like, yeah, I met some of them. I fought an alien made out of black goo. He's like, oh, I fought an alien too. I fought on Earth and in space. He was purple. It's like, I'm still on the fact that you fought an alien in space. And then ASM Peter's like, oh, y'all are so cool. I'm not even cool. And then that's when you get Tobey's Spider-Man like, no, you're amazing. Obviously a nod at the Amazing Spider-Man. And just kind of keeps saying, you're amazing. You're amazing. He's like, thank you. I needed that and all that kind of stuff. It was so good. I loved it. That was probably my favorite part of the movie, was just when they were talking with each other. So then, obviously, all the villains come in, and obviously, right now, it's just Sandman, Electro, and Lizard, because Green Goblin is off doing his own thing. Doc Ock is good, essentially, so he's on his own. So they're trying to fight those three. They're screwing it up, as you would expect with Spider-Man. They're trying, but nothing's really working. They're not coordinated. So that's when they kind of they have their come to Jesus meeting. And they kind of do the Spider-Man pointing thing, the meme that everyone uses, which is kind of cool. And obviously it wasn't like a true, like everyone's like standing around, but they were in like the triangle pointing at each other, which was really funny and really cool. That some people may have missed. But go back and look at it. It's really cool. So then they start coordinating. Like, okay, we're just going to focus on Sandman right now. Let's do Sandman. Let's get him. How are we going to get him? We're going to put him inside the tower. We're just going to flashbang him, basically, whatever the collider was. So they do that. They get Sandman, and the coolest thing about it, when Sandman is being returned, it's Tobey Maguire, it's the OG Spider-Man that gets him, and you hear the return of the OG Spider-Man theme. The theme that basically is Spider-Man for those first three movies. And when I heard that, I'm like, that's so cool. Because I have a large base in music, so I like whenever that kind of stuff happens, it's like I am able to sense it quicker. And to me, that made it so much more impactful, because you really realize that Tobey, like you get why it's so rejuvenating. So anyway, they get Sandman. And then they get Electro, because that's when Doc Ock comes in. He pretends to be evil for a second. He's like, no, I'm going to take care of them. And then he puts the thing on Electro. He gets rid of the arc reactor or whatever. And so then Electro's taken out. And then finally, the Lizard is taken out. He turns back human. And then you get this nice little scene between between Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, and Doc Ock. And just kind of catching up. He's like, because he has the arc reactor, and he's talking about how like this was his work. He was working for toward the arc reactor in Spider-Man 2, realistically. And Tobey comes in, he's like, the power of the sun, and Tobey comes in, he's like, in the palm of your hand. and that's when they kind of reunite and catch up, and it's a really nice, it's a heartwarming scene, and then you hear the OG Spider-Man theme again. And you probably heard the Amazing Spider-Man theme. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you, so I probably missed it, but I'm sure if I heard it again, I would actually catch it. I would catch it this time. So at this point, you think, okay, the battle's over, we're all good, until you hear the Goblin. Green Goblin comes in. He's trying to kill them all. He shoots his little goblin bombs or whatever the things were, and that's when you get the true battle. He's fighting MJ and Ned are now on the thing. I think Doctor Strange is there too, but that's right. Doctor Strange comes back right when the battle is over between the other three. He now has the box. He's about to change them all back. Goblin steals the box away from him, puts a bomb in it without them knowing it. They get the bomb back, or they get the box back, and right before Doctor Strange hits it, it explodes. So the spell that's inside in the micro dimension now comes out, and now you start seeing that. This is where in the trailer you see all of the universes trying to come through, the purple cracks, and he's up on the top of the Statue of Liberty trying to shoot it all down, trying to make sure that nothing comes through and all that kind of stuff. So that all that happens. They're all trying to fight Green Goblin. Green Goblin knocks MJ off the thing. MCU Peter jumps down trying to catch her. Green Goblin comes through, sideswipes him. So MJ's still falling. And then this is where everyone was hoping would happen. Andrew Garfield sees it, runs, jumps, catches her, whips up, and saves her before she hits the ground. And you see in his face the grief and the just relief that he feels that what happened to him is not going to happen to this Peter. And the whole theme of the light versus dark Peter, which one is going to win? At this moment, you realize light Peter is going to win. Because in this moment, the Amazing Spider-Man Peter is redeemed by saving Michelle or MJ in this. But so all that happens. Peter's still on the glider. He grabs a bomb. He starts it. He puts it back in. He's pissed. You see it on his face. He is mad at the Goblin. He blows up the glider. They both fall down on the shield of the Statue of Liberty, which fell off, I think, during the box explosion. And this is where you see the final battle. And Peter is mad. You can sense how much rage and how much anger is in him. And Green Goblin is terrifying still. He knows what's about to happen. He knows he's angry. He wants it. And he's like, you don't have the heart to kill us. He's like, no. I'm going to kill you myself. And he goes, it looked like a scene out of Mortal Kombat. Just combo after combo after combo after combo. Just knocking the absolute snot out of Green Goblin. It was so, and you sense his anger. He's like, oh no, is the dark actually going to win? Because you see him pick up, after he's knocked him to the ground, he picks up the glider, which has the spikes on it, by the way, and is about to just slam it down on him and just kill him. And then you see OG Spider-Man come in and stop it and save Green Goblin. Obviously, part of that is being that he knows Norman Osborn. He's friends with Norman Osborn. He wanted to save Norman Osborn in his movie, but he couldn't. He's going to this time. And they kind of have their little stare down between MCU Spider-Man and OG Spider-Man, and they're staring at each other. It's like, don't do this. Don't do this. And eventually he does ease him off. They put the glider down. If everything's okay, boom, he gets stabbed. He stabs him. He falls. Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, is like, no, and he throws him the gas. Peter catches it, stabs him. It works this time because something that was kind of mentioned before was that Tobey Maguire's been thinking about how he could have helped Green Goblin for, I guess, basically almost 20 years now, since the original movie. I guess that came in 2002, so yeah, about 20 years, more or less. So he's been thinking, he knows how to fix it. So he stabs him, it works, and Green Goblin is gone. And you see Norman Osborn return. He's like, what have I done? Because he knows bad stuff has happened. And that's kind of the end of the movie. Well, not necessarily, because the sky is still coming in. It's still trying. The other universes are trying to come in. You see a bunch of different people coming in. You see, I know I saw Kraven. I know I saw Scorpion in the first one, and I saw Rhino. So I saw those three. I'm sure there were more that if I really stopped and looked at it, I could figure out. But when you're just watching the movie, you can only kind of pick out one or two. But that was so cool to see all those little cameos of all these characters coming in. So then Doctor Strange is like, I can't stop it all. They're coming in too much. He's like, okay, well, what if people just forgot who I was? What if everyone forgot who Peter Parker was? But remember, the first time it was, I want people to forget that I'm Spider-Man. This time he's willing to do what's best for everyone. And just, you guys don't remember who I am. Peter Parker doesn't exist anymore. It's like, and Doctor Strange basically says, you realize if you do this, everyone who loves you, and he hesitates because obviously that means Doctor Strange as well. Everyone, we will no longer know who you are. He's like, I know, I'm willing to do that. This is for what's best. So then Doctor Strange casts a spell. It disperses everything. He says his goodbyes to Andrew and Toby. They hug it out for a little bit. There's a funny little thing at the end of it where Andrew's like, you're in pain, aren't you? Because obviously Toby got stabbed. He's like, oh, I'm in so much pain. It hurts so bad. And it was just so funny. And you see them disappear. You see all the other villains disappear back to whatever universe. I would assume that they're not going to die because they did get healed and the box didn't send them back. The spell did. But I don't know. So you see all of them disappear. And you see this one final goodbye with MJ and Ned. And he's like, you're not going to remember who I am. There's no way to fix this. This is what has to happen. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to explain it to you. And you feel how heartbreaking it is. Because he's essentially breaking up with his girlfriend and his best friend. Like, they are no longer going to know who he is. So he says his goodbyes and he flies off. And after that, as far as we know, no one knows who he is. No one. Absolutely no one knows who Spider-Man is. You see him, it's probably about a couple months out. It's now winter time. Probably around Christmas. Probably around the same time as Hawkeye, realistically. Maybe we'll see Spider-Man, maybe we won't. Because apparently he's living like right next to where the big battle is about to take place too. So anyway, you see him go into the coffee shop where him and MJ and Ned were all found out they didn't get into MIT. He goes in, he sees MJ, Ned is there too, neither of them recognize him. He's about to tell MJ, hey, remember me? Or he's about to tell him the code word that she said to use for when he tries to tell her, which is, I think, sweet, she said. He goes in and he doesn't do it. He gets his coffee. They have a little connection. You almost can tell that MJ almost recognizes him. At least that's what it looks like. Because she still has the cut on her head from the battle. She's like, yeah, no, it doesn't hurt anymore. And it almost looked like she recognizes Peter for a split second. And which brings me to one of my questions that I have, my big questions to have at the end of the movie. But he doesn't do anything. He just leaves. He gets in. He has a new apartment that he's staying in now. He's studying for his GED, his good enough diploma, as Chris Rock would say. And he's Spider-Man. But this time, it's no longer a Tony Stark Spider-Man suit. It's the OG Spider-Man suit. Like, it's red. It's like almost glitter blue, like shiny blue. That is, and he made it himself. It's his costume, and I think it's kind of a slight homage to the other two. I want to see what the logos are on both, but he basically has like an OG Spider-Man costume, like full red, like bright red, bright blue, like Spider-Man. And that's kind of how the movie ends. He flips off in the distance. He's just going out to save. He has on his phone. He has like a little police dispatcher thing that he uses to try to figure out what's happening. And yeah, that's the end of the movie. That's it. No more, like, and so yeah, the movie ends with Spider-Man being Spider-Man. No, Peter Parker doesn't really exist. Yeah, that's kind of it. Yeah, so then you go into the after credits scene, you see Venom. He's trying to figure out what's happening. And he's trying to figure out, okay, so there's this dude in a 10-man suit talking about Iron Man. There's this alien that likes stones. I'm telling you, aliens don't like stones, stuff like that. And then he disappears too, because obviously everyone who knows Peter Parker Spider-Man goes. Even though I don't think he actually knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. So he's a little weird, I'm not going to lie. He doesn't really fit in as much. I think it was a nice little cameo. But a little bit of the Venom symbiote stays behind. Which now means Venom is truly in the MCU. And then the second post-credit scene is a teaser trailer for Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, which is super cool. You see a bunch of different things, and you even see, like, I think it looks like it might be the evil Doctor Strange from What If, but I think it might be a different one. We'll see. But yeah, that's the movie. It ends with no one knowing who Peter Parker is anymore. He's no longer with MJ. Ned doesn't know who he is. No one knows who he is, basically. And he's just doing his own thing. So that kind of brings me to my big 4 questions that I have at the end of this movie. Number 1, did Doctor Strange create Westview 2.0? Because you see MJ kind of recognizes Peter. Just like how in Westview, they were kind of in and out of like they kind of knew what was going on, but they couldn't do anything about it. So my question is, since Doctor Strange is definitely more adept at magic, is he basically create the spell create a world where everyone knows what happened, but no one can do anything about it because the spell is absolute. So maybe there is a way to break the spell in a way that MJ will remember everything that happens. Ned will remember everything that happens. Stuff like that. That was one of the questions I had, and probably the answer is probably no, but that is something that was interesting. The other thing that was big from the movie is, does Fury remember Spider-Man, or does he remember Peter? Because I'm trying to look back, and me and my girlfriend actually had we didn't have an argument, but we were talking about it and discussing it. Is it everyone in the universe that will no longer know Peter Parker's Spider-Man, or is it just everyone on Earth? Because if you think about it, no one in space really knows he's Spider-Man. Obviously, probably the Guardians of the Galaxy do. They don't really count. That would actually be kind of funny to see in, like, the holiday special or something like that. Seeing, like, different versions of the Guardians of the Galaxy come out. That would be kind of cool. And that's kind of it, because everyone who knew Thanos is dead, basically. So it's possible that maybe it only counts for people on Earth, and since Nick Fury's in space, he still knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He still knows Peter Parker. So that's another question I have. But that solely depends on what Doctor Strange says at the end of the movie, and I'm sure I can look it up. The last 2 are just kind of broader ones of, like, what comes next for Spider-Man. Obviously, we know that it is confirmed they are planning a new trilogy for him and for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Basically the college years, essentially. And so we do kind of know what's coming next, but we don't know when. So anything could happen at this point. And the way they ended the movie off was very much in a way that they could go about the MCU without ever using Spider-Man again, or you can bring him back. So that's kind of what I think that's their discussion. I think I've heard rumors that there is one more thing in his contract that he has to be in for the MCU. So he could very well be in this next episode of Hawkeye, which, again, he's living right next to the Rockefeller Center, which apparently is where the big battle at the end of the movie is supposed to take place. So there is that. And then finally, do we see Venom in Spider-Man 4, or are we going to wait a little longer? I would argue that we should wait. I think we should flesh out Venom a little bit more. I think maybe that should be Spider-Man 6 or maybe Spider-Man 5, if they even go that far, before we see Venom. But yeah, that's another question, because Venom is officially in the MCU now. So that will be interesting to see. But yeah, that's basically that's the movie. For me, I loved it. It was probably, to me, it was better than Endgame, in my opinion. And I hold Endgame in a very high regard, mistakes and all, because the way I grew up playing with like superheroes, like I played with Legos, so I grew up with big battle scenes, all the heroes versus all the villains, all that kind of stuff. I also did a lot of stuff with multiverse, like having an evil Captain America, evil whatever, an evil version of all of my characters. So seeing the multiverse happen again and seeing 3 different versions of the same person battling, to me, just made all the sense in the world. It was like great. It was again seeing something I had seen as a kid play out on the big screen. So for me, that was awesome. But yeah, so for me, I think this is definitely in my top 2 Marvel movies, probably my favorite of all of them. But yeah, that was kind of my thoughts. Hopefully you guys also did enjoy the movie. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. I know it was quite a long one, it's an hour 20 minutes about. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think. Did you enjoy the movie? What were your favorite parts? What were your least favorite parts, if you had them? Do you agree with all the hype that this movie has now? Hearing what I have to say and just kind of seeing it for yourself. Do you enjoy this movie as much as I did? Because I loved it. I loved every second of it. And like I said, I only had the one gripe with Ned, and like that was it. And even then, really looking back on it now, it's like, yeah, it was okay. I mean, it doesn't bother me as much now. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And again, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys later.